Oh, there we go. Hey, Durham. It's great to be here with you. Great to be back. One of my jokes is currently serving as President of the United States of America. It's why things are going so well.
You know, it's always such a chore when you have to do the fireside with somebody that's so shy and introverted. But somehow we're going to muscle through with this, and hopefully you'll be patient with us as I try to extract Andrew's position on certain things. Um, you heard from Lister's introduction, his bona fides and credentials, and I'm fairly confident in making this statement. I doubt there's a person in this room that doesn't know you. What I would probably speculate that isn't known is the full breadth of your portfolio and everything that you have done. And as you may recall from my talk earlier this morning with some of the people I got to introduce, I had some past and go back, and it may not surprise you that Andrew and I collaborated several years ago, as in I think around 2011, when you had started Venture for America, and I was at the Kauffman Foundation. This notion of really giving people, young people, an opportunity to be in a startup so that they could see it as an alternative career option was a novel idea. And I have to tell you, I'm going to come full circle because what we had earlier today with the ECMC Foundation and the Bold Path Forward initiative is very similar in the ambition, although more focused on specifically on historically underserved, under opportunities individuals, which I think ties into a lot of your portfolio. Before we get deep on all of that stuff, I do want to start with, hey, Yang, where's my $1,000? And what I mean by that is, fresh from his Substack, which I cannot recommend highly enough. 2 hours ago, it came in, the announcement of your next book, which will undoubtedly be another best-selling book. Why don't I give you a moment to give that a quick plug, and then we can jump in on all your impressive credentials.
Oh, well, thank you, Tom, and thank you for having me back. I confess to you all, two people got me to come today. Lister Delgado, thank you for being an early investor in Noble Mobile, and Tom Ruse, been an awesome champion to entrepreneurs for years and years, decade plus. Let's give them both a round of applause. So I do have a book coming out in February. It's sort of a lighthearted annal of the last number of years called Hey Yang, Where's My $1,000? The alternate title, some of you will appreciate, was Hey, Am I Racist or Are You Andrew Yang? Think about it. Thinking. I thought that this is going to be a challenging time for a lot of people, and I thought, what can I do to contribute? And I am really excited to lower Americans' wireless bills. We all pay $83 a month on average. In Europe, that's 35. In Australia, it's 32. In Israel, it's a bit lower. So if you look at this extra $50 a month, the average American is paying for our wireless, it amounts to a hidden tax of tens of billions of dollars. So I'm really excited to try and get us to look up and free ourselves from, frankly, the price gouging that's going on in this industry. It's singular to the United States. When I was in another context, someone said, "You mean Americans are paying more for something than other people?"
Shocking.
Like, that's never happened in any other industry or context. But I also thought that if this is a challenging time, maybe I can do something a little bit more lighthearted. And I've had some fascinating experiences over the last number of years that I've not had an opportunity to share. And so I thought, you know what? Let me just write a book, and then it took on a life of its own, and so it's coming out in February. So feel free if you want to laugh and cry, or cry and laugh. Please check it out.
Speaking of trying to do something more creative, I think it's fair to say you'll be the first speaker and probably only speaker for a few more years that had summer camp experience with Dave Chappelle. And maybe it's experiences like that that helped create that incredible promo for Noble Mobile. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to tell you Google it at this moment because you got the real McCoy here, okay?
I can't reenact that ad. Right?
Well, I don't know. You probably have a lot of volunteers here that would be willing to sacrifice their cell phone for the cause. But it is hilarious, and it is so creative, and it's a nice reminder, especially in these current times. The panel right before us, that one of the F words was fun, right? That there's no reason why we can't bring levity and fun and kind of be the sorbet, the mental sorbet that maybe a lot of us need right now.
So Dave Chappelle did endorse me on the presidential. He came to Iowa, and we shot some videos where he said, "I'm Chris Tucker," and I said, "I'm Jackie Chan," and it's Rush Hour 4 in America, The Path to Freedom. And then my joke about this is, and then millions of Iowans saw this video and thought, "Wow, Jackie Chan looks great. That guy hasn't aged a day." Uh, so I've had some varied experiences over this last number of years, but becoming friends with Dave has been a real honor. And got to celebrate his 50th birthday with him last year in Madison Square Garden, and then visited him in Ohio multiple times, including for a summer camp, which I highly recommend to anyone who's a fan.
So, let's talk about, you mentioned voters in Iowa and what their perception was. Let's talk there, if you're okay to talk about what that was like. Again, I think there's probably, show of hands, how many people have run for president of the United States in the room?
I guess I'll raise my hand to that.
Okay, so we've got the expert here. I don't know, I could tee up a pithy question, but I think I'd just rather give you the floor and talk about that, because you were like in the storm that at the moment doesn't feel like it's ever ending, but you were in the storm and you gave us a lot of first concepts that at first people were like, what the? And now all of a sudden, especially with AI, that tsunami of AI, like universal basic income, like, wait, what? Maybe that guy wasn't so nuts back in the day. Why don't you share what you can with us?
Yeah, imagine making the AI case to a group of truckers at a truck stop in Iowa in 2019, which I did. you know, but it has borne out over this last number of months, and many of you have investments in various AI or AI-enabled companies. I talked to CEOs and partners at law firms who say that they are hiring fewer young people than they did, because it turns out that AI can do a lot of that entry-level white-collar work. And I didn't get the sequencing precisely right, but I knew directionally this was coming, in part because I was a miserable attorney for 5 months in the late 90s, early 2000s, where doing document review was like, AI can definitely do this job and do it a lot better. And I was a highly educated young person, and many of you have been in large corporates, so you know that there's a lot of work that's being done that is essentially repetitive data processing, or like trying to get one system to talk to another. And so back in 2019, making this case, by the way, I wish that more people had raised their hands to like who ran for president, just because I ran for the simplest of reasons. Like, I thought I could contribute something, and you all know dozens of people in your own lives that you would substitute in for current leaders. Honestly, it'd be like, and sleep better at night. The problem is that most of the people that you would love to see in that role don't necessarily want to brave the terrain of American politics today, because they have they're reasonable people and have good stable family lives, and aren't exactly itching to get slagged online on the daily. Like, that's not an aspiration. So no, I ran trying to mainstream a case. I will confess to you all, I did not expect to win. Though you're not allowed to say that on the trail, because a reporter says, "Hey, like, are you serious?" And you're not allowed to say like, "Nah." It's like,
I think it might make it harder to extract checks from funders as well.
Yeah, no. So I was joking. It's like you can't say like, "Yes, I am serious," or "You sound a little crazy," or you can't say, "No, I'm not serious," because then you're unserious. So then you choose this new answer, which is, "This is a campaign of ideas with multiple goals." Huh? So I did not expect to be president. I'm the child of immigrants. Not like my parents were like, "You're gonna be president someday." Like, that wasn't a conversation in the Yang household. But it was more, it's like, can I raise the alarm to the fact that we're going to undergo the most dramatic transformation of our economy and the labor force in our lifetimes, and we're asleep at the switch, And so I thought, look, I can at least mainstream solutions that I think would improve our odds of getting through this strong and whole. And America's GDP right now is 85,000 a person. It's going up and up with AI. Seems like enough where you might be able to start distributing 12,000 a year if it's going to help some people uh, manage and get through and also make people feel included. I was a CNN commentator. I still sort of am sometimes, but like I was a CNN commentator and they brought me in and they pitched me an idea. They said, "Hey, Andrew, let's do a TV show with you called The Future of with Andrew Yang." It's like the future of medicine, the future of transportation. I was like, "Oh, this sounds fine. Let's look into it." So then they came back after they did a focus group and said, "Hey, Andrew, some bad news. Americans don't like the future." Oh, I mean, I want you all to think about that. Now, that isn't true in this room because, like, you all are positive, entrepreneurial, like, contributors, ecosystem builders, founders, like whatever. It's like you all feel pretty good about the future, but the average American does not. And the question is why? And I think that if you think about it for a second, you kind of know why. It's because they don't actually feel like they're being included in the AI revolution and the progress. They're more concerned about getting kicked to the curb, and they're seeing their kids also struggling in various ways, whether it's through screen addiction, which, by the way, can be helped through Noble Mobile, so very exciting. But their kids are getting like anxious or depressed on social media, and they're not sure about their prospects. And so, in that environment, then you end up with some very distorted politics. And if someone comes in and represents like, "Hey, let's like manage it." In a calm, reasonable manner, people are like, oh, like I want someone crazier than that. Like, give me something, give me something more change-oriented, whether the change is positive or negative. So, uh, so the things that got me into the race, unfortunately, have only sped up since then.
So, and again, in your impressive CV and bona fides, entrepreneurship is a theme that runs throughout. You laid out the case that civic trust is an issue, which are making certain vulnerable population segments of the population vulnerable to, extreme ideas or things. Frankly, supporting ideas that work against their own self-interest. Right? I know that's going to come as a shock to you that that's happening. Help us connect how we might use entrepreneurship as a tool, as a device to build the economy maybe from the bottom up or the middle out and combat some of that. Because I'll tell you, for one of the things that, just a theory, and since I have a very brilliant person sitting next to me, I'll go ahead and risk embarrassing myself. I think that one of the reasons entrepreneurship works is because entrepreneurs do not suspend critical thinking. They don't care your politics. They're going to evaluate your statements, your offerings, your motives for what they are, and they'll worry about the politics afterwards. And I think that critical thinking component is in short supply right now, and I think entrepreneurship is a path to it. And I'm going to stall for one more second while you think about that to remind everybody we're going to leave time at the end for questions. So if you all want to start thinking, except for Jim, he already used his. Sorry, Jim. But we'll take some questions at the end of the conversation. So with that said,
Yeah. So one of the problems is the framing of left versus right or blue versus red, which I don't think captures the essence of the time we're in. The real struggle is between institutional trust and mistrust, and abundance and optimism versus scarcity and negativity. And you're right, Tom, that entrepreneurship has a chance to pull people more toward like a sense that their lives can be okay and they can grow and like their kids are going to do better. If you had entrepreneurship widely accessible and available and people saw it in their towns, their own lives. And certainly that's the way I came up, where I joined a growth company and then started a company and then it grew, and I managed to, like frankly, elevate the careers of like a number of people that we onboard and around like that. That's a very abundant environment. And in that sort of environment, the people are like, okay, things are working. Too many Americans right now are very much feel like they're on the outside of that dynamic looking in. And so you end up having these various media organizations, and a lot of the legacy media organizations have fallen into this institutional bucket where it's like I don't listen to you anymore, I don't trust you, like you're talking like a different language, and then they end up seeking different information sources, typically online, typically alternate media, and then alternate media ends up being somewhat oppositional to the legacy media Now, and again, I don't think it actually falls on this left-right axis. It's more, again, institutional and then anti-institutional, or like ex-institutional, ex as in like outside. So how do you get more people to feel like they're on the inside is like really the major challenge in a time when the islands of prosperity are shrinking. They're not growing. Now, this environment's an exception. Like, this is a prosperous environment. Here, the islands are growing. This room is not a thing in most of the country in terms of like people gathering to support innovation, entrepreneurship with real resources and the rest of it. You all are really like top tier in the country in terms of communities where abundance is winning. It's one reason why. No, and it's one reason why it's a joy to visit here. It's a joy to be here with you all. Now, even here, your like framing is like, hey, it's working in the triangle, but then you go out to some part that's like out of the triangle, like the east or the more rural areas, and people feel like they're outside looking in. So like, what do we do something about that? Like, and so that's like, and that's in many ways like the challenge that Tom, you're taking on, and like a lot of other people here are taking it on. But then you translate that to the nation at large, and you really have what feels like a rising water level and more people like treading water furiously, trying to stay above it. And then messaging coming from on high saying like, hey, it's their fault. Like, things are okay. You should be mad at them because of some cultural difference. And more folks are feeling alienated. Is that? It's a pretty reasonable diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I have some ideas to fix it. I mean,
And we're going to get to those ideas because speaking of them, when we use the term economic development, and certainly something you had to address, on the stump, given your speeches out there, the coin of the realm has been for too many years, in my opinion, this, large tax incentives for a large established company to move into a region. Right now it's all the hype is data centers, right? Where we will just suck every last kilowatt of power it can extract out of your state, and we'll invest $6 billion because that's what it costs to build the factory. I would say that's not a community asset. You're not having your daughter's quinceañera celebration in the beautiful glass lobby of that. They're not flooding the back parking lot and making an ice rink in the winter for kids to come and skate. And, we're going to have 500 jobs of screwdriver turners, if they're even at a living wage. But yet, that's still the headlines. Those are still the photo ops. Those are, and it's a bipartisan error in my part. Every big elected official loves the presser that goes with that. We've got these spray painted shovels, the ceremonial box of dirt. And I look at that and I say, okay, people in this room know how much I've been railing against that for the last decade. And if we can't break the addiction on that, can we do a this and strategy? Maybe we have the discipline to say for every dollar of a tax incentive that goes over here, we throw a quarter in this jar called entrepreneurship. Because in the aggregate, it's the startups that are creating all the net new jobs in this country.
You don't need to convince me, Tom. I mean, I think the zero-sum competition across states, even sometimes municipalities, is just benefiting certain corporates and the communities. By the way, they always overpromise. It's a little bit like sports stadiums too. It's like, oh, we're gonna like create this much. I mean, at least sports stadiums, they're gonna employ vendors and like real people. I mean, some of the server farms and whatnot, it's like, oh, we're gonna employ this many people. That number's gonna dwindle as quickly as possible because we're gonna try and automate the heck out of it. And right now, our economy is at a very bizarre juncture where the major growth area is investment in compute and AI and the rest of it. And you have these trillion-dollar companies on the promise of tens of billions of revenue that may or may not materialize in the right time frame to justify some of their current investment. And it's become a little bit of like a tail wagging the dog where it's driving venture capital in a lot of other parts of the country. I don't know if it's the case here. It's driving the stock market. It's driving the narrative. And again, the average American's looking up at this and be like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Like I mean, maybe they can buy one share of Nvidia stock and like hope for the best. But I mean, and by the way, in my view, like not to prognosticate on that level, but it's like some of these valuations really don't match up with any kind of economic reality unless they discover God. I know. I mean, I mean, you really have to look at this, and that's a lot of what's at play here. I mean, this is beyond, like, some of these numbers are beyond the comprehension of most Americans, and you all are more numerate than like the average American by like orders of magnitude, and even some of you are like, holy crap, like I don't even know what this number is, and so you have that kind of force animating a lot of like the quote unquote growth, and to me, like, this is not the right recipe. Like, I would like nothing more than if it was getting invested in droves of startups and entrepreneurs. In part because, by the way, like, I don't know if people read into my background, but my first venture failed, my second venture failed, I made my third, depending upon how you look at how you keep count. I mean, let's say the third, like, eventually, I hit my stride and my parents started talking to me again, um, but but when you invest in like on entrepreneurs development, like you're sometimes investing in their next startup, honestly, and that's totally awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still indebted to the folks who invested in my first startup, even though it did not work out. And I hope that they take credit for everything that happened after.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to make that point because earlier in my talk, this year's theme, we're using this thing of ours that you can see on that table tent there. And I'm trying to make the point that you were alluding to, that collectively we're creating value for the community. And it becomes of greater value for everyone based upon how much we all put into it. And that means having that vision to pay it forward, to say it won't, maybe it's not this first one, but it will be the second one. And if not, we'll be there for you when you start your third one. But as long as we have the faith to
That's
do
the
it.
magic of this space that I love so much. It really can be 1 + 1 = 3. Like, where else can you make that happen? And I've lived a version of it. My parents immigrated to this country, and uh, like, I've had a career I couldn't have dreamt of. So much so that I decided to try and alleviate poverty at scale. And by the way, that ended up resulting in an increase to the child tax credit in the most recent legislation, which amounted to something like $80 billion a year to the working families of this country. And so I genuinely, like, I can go to the people who supported my campaign, which I hope includes some of you. No, I'm kidding. But the people who supported my campaign be like, look, we actually reduced child poverty in this country. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, we put an idea out there. Like, I'm someone who actually tries to keep score as to what was accomplished. And it's that kind of step, I think, that we should be doing much more of. One of the things that does break my heart is that when I was running for president, like, some of the most common questions I got were like, hey, can we afford that? Like, can we do that? Like, um, is that something real? And then we printed $7 trillion during COVID, but 85% of that did not go to families. Like, it went to corporates and the exchanges, and in some cases the balance sheets of states and a bunch of other, some of which it's like, you can make a call. I get it. But we just took a massive amount of our, like, treasury or kids' like futures or whatever, and just, like, essentially, like, made sure that stock market prices would be all right, is really what we use that 7 trillion for. And so when I was marching around the country being like, oh, we can do this, we can alleviate poverty at scale, people first and foremost would be like, where does the money come from? Where does the money come from? It's like, oh, we're the richest, most advanced society in the history of the world. Like, we can afford this. And then we ended up taking a multiple of the amount I was advocating for, and then essentially shoring up corporates and institutional balance sheets. And look, again, I mean, it was an emergency, and like, I was at the time advocating for us, like, doing more, but I would have started with people and families. It's like, look, people and families, and then the companies will be okay anyway. Or maybe just like draw the line in a different place. So this is related to what you're saying, Tom. It's like I think the closer to the ground you invest, the better, the more human. Ideally, you can even look the person in the eyes, you know, like that. But our society today doesn't really trust people that way. Like it's trying to stay like a level removed or two levels removed, and being like, you know what, we're going to prioritize over all else: the markets, the system. And then there are a lot of Americans who don't see that in their own lives.
Do we prioritize that? Because it seems like we have we keep under the auspice of capitalism, we keep the profits privatized, but we socialize the losses, and we say the taxpayers can pick up
Oh,
that
that's
bill.
what I'm describing. It's like if you let the stock market just do its thing during COVID, there would have been massive losses. And there are some people that were like, well, you know, I guess that's why we have these markets, is still so that you end up capitalizing those losses. But our society collectively, our government was like, no, 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 like we cannot have that. So cruise ship operators, here are billions of dollars. Like what? There are no cruises happening. Doesn't matter. Just take the money. You know, it's like we did that for business after business. It was a choice, you know, but there was like a massive uh, spend that could have gone in any of a bunch of other directions that I think would have had like a more lasting positive impact.
So then, how do we change the narrative? Right? Is there some sort of bipartisan effort to come up with a rubric? And so, if we are considering plays for,
Have you seen the headlines lately, man? I mean, you're not
I
describing
know
anything like resembling
I left my
the world we live in.
I left my rose-colored glasses sitting over there. But like you said earlier, this is a room full of optimists. You know, we are glass half full, and I'll continue to be glass half full until I'm either fired or I'm doing my next great adventure. And so, I don't purport
I
to
do
have.
like that about you, Tom. And I do love that about entrepreneurs generally. I joke with my wife. It's like my problem is that if something has some price tag attached to it, I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like it'll come, or like, you know, just, you know, like make moves. I must be a terrible husband. No, everything's good. Still married, 2 kids. Um, I have a vision for how we can reform the political system. I didn't intend necessarily to get into it here in this environment, but I can touch on it briefly. I gave the number 7 TED Talk of last year on this subject. Number 1 was my friend Scott Galloway, who I was with last week, and I definitely recommend his most recent work. But it was around our primary system, where our primary system ends up distorting things and dragging us to the sides because if you are an elected official, just for fun, what is the approval rating of Congress as we're together right now? It's like 17%. I've seen 13. It's around that level. What is the re-election rate for incumbent members? 94%. So I joke, if you're an operator, like imagine if 4 out of 5 of your customers were unhappy, but you changed absolutely nothing. That's the way the average American interacts with our current political system. And so you wonder why there's disillusionment and the rest of it. It's because you don't have like a genuine competition at the district level. And so the way out of that is to have primary reform, just like anyone can vote any election. They're publicly financed. It's like, why am I paying for elections? I'm not even allowed to vote unless I, you know, am this party or that. And by the way, independence now, which I'm sure describes many of you, it's about half the country and rising all the time. 2/3 of young people are independents because they don't think either of the two parties is working. So like the question is, how do things change? And as entrepreneurs, I'm going to suggest to you all, it's like we have an archaic 2-party system that's disintegrating before our eyes, but it just won't allow anything else to enter. And so the question is like, how do we respond to that? Like, can we build our way out? And I'm someone who thinks that we can build our way out. I'd actually suggest we have no choice but to build our way out. So I sit before you, the co-chair of the 3rd biggest political party in the country by resources forward, which is not saying a whole lot. It just means that we're better fundraisers than the Greens or the Libertarians, which is not that hard. I mean, again, why didn't more of you run for president? We could like just we can do this. And the chair of the North Carolina Forward Party is here in the room. Where are you, Pat? There's Pat Newton, the chair of the North Carolina Forward Party. So there are real life entrepreneurs trying to build our way out of this. And I'm going to just close on this image for you. How many U.S. senators would it take to form a fulcrum of reasonable folks in the middle in a very polarized time? How many senators do you need? 2 or 3 probably, because at that point, neither side would be able to pass anything without the 3 in the middle. And by the way, we already have one of them. We need like 2 more. And so that's achievable. Like Forward is not trying to get 51% of any vote. We just need about 5%, and then take advantage of some outsized opportunities. And if you'd had those 3 senators in the middle who are like genuinely principled, you never would have had a shutdown over this past period of time. They would have just looked at it and said, like, guys, this makes no sense. But instead, you had the party, like, I'll just say that, like, you had at least the Democrats just playing to their base. And Chuck Schumer had the same decision in March, and he was like, we're not shutting it down. And you know what happened? Just everyone freaking stuck it to him right after that. And he was like, okay, I get it. I like this time, next time we need to fight. And so he was just responding to the base. And you kind of sensed on some level, Chuck, like, kind of knew this was not going to result in anything but pain. But that's just politics today. So if you'd had 3 senators in the middle, they could have avoided the whole thing. And that, to me, is an achievable goal. There's some folks who, and I hope this is one thing you can take away, there's some folks who imagine that some of the things I do are just like, hey, like Yang just wants to make sure that he can like run for president again, blah, 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 blah. Like, I just want shit to work. Like, I do not care. Like, I like my family. I'm not like trying to disappear on them for like months at a time or whatever. I just want stuff to work. Like, I'm a child of immigrants to this country. Like, my parents came to this country. Great life for me. Great life for my brother. Like, let's see if we can do the same for our kids.
I think one of the several reasons that we're muy simpatico is because that's my brother. He's actually a naturalized citizen, so don't anybody call ICE. I am the first anchor baby, same German immigrant parents.
Oh, wow.
Raised to believe in the American dream, to be part of it if you're willing to work for it. And this might get a little bit of deep cut, but I was opining with friends one evening about like, how did we get here? And there's so many reasons, but I think one that has already started decades ago is just really disinvesting in education, especially around civics and social studies. Like, most people, young and old, could not even describe how the government works anymore, because we just have de-emphasized it. We just think it's something that magically happens, that we bitch about more often than we praise, and we wait for something to change, but do nothing different, right?
Well, it's one reason why I enjoy being in environments like this is that there are so many can-do builders who would never accept this kind of state of affairs in their businesses, their organizations, like in their own lives. But then, like you said, Tom, it's like politics, don't want to touch. To me, like the status quo is going to change. It just cannot continue to rumble on in this direction. And so the question is how, and the question is who. And so it's folks like you all, like us, who have had awesome opportunities, who think, you know what, like we can do something about it. And that's one of the big messages of it from Forward, which is my F word, Forward. And my joke is that backward party was already taken.
Oh man, you are a challenge to keep up with. That's awesome. You had said you're not announcing your next run, but I've got the microphone, so I'm going to ask, whether it's under the auspice of the Forward Party or anything else, the next Andrew Yang presidential run, what's the platform?
The alleviation of poverty in the face of AI case is getting stronger and stronger, and there are a lot of people in this room who know that there's going to be a lost generation of workers coming out. The comparison I make is that when I was an attorney, you had a pyramid structure at these firms because you had like a few partners, then an army of associates, and then some people would work their way up. Today, that pyramid is going to become a column because you have the partners, and then they're going to hire like a few people, like manage stuff below. But you don't need the army. You don't need grunt work. The grunt work is going to be produced by AI, and then you get to keep more of the economics. So there are a lot of folks who now are like, oh, by the way, I get this every day too. I mean, like, so people every day, man, you called it AI, you called it Yang, like blah, 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 blah. So, I think we should be taking much bigger swings at trying to address the needs of recent college graduates. I love the fellowship, like the that you described, um, and
Is
that
AI net positive or net negative for humanity?
it could be tremendously positive. The problem though is that you're just gonna kick a lot of people to the curb and just be like, yeah, capitalism. Like, by the way, again, like I'm a capitalist, I'm a serial entrepreneur, but you got to see that there are going to be dramatic sets of winners and losers on this one, and the winners are going to be vastly outnumbered by the losers. I mean, you're going to probably wind up with like a trillionaire at some point, but the average American is going to be thinking like, what happened to my truck driving job or whatnot, and so. I would probably sound somewhat similar to the way I did in 2020, though I'm sure it would go very differently. I'm sure it would go much better.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's the old adage? First they ignore you.
Then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
Exactly.
I wonder what phase I'm at now.
Yeah, that would be a curiosity for sure. And yeah, and
But again, like like I just want things to go well, and like I don't know if you can tell, like I'm perfectly indifferent as to whether like I hold a particular office or any of that jazz. It's like it's not. It might not even be my first choice.
yeah. Well, I think that's part of why you're who you are and a visionary. And I think we're waiting for the time for humanity and society to catch up to you. Um, I had warned y'all. This is Andrew freaking Yang, to use my F word. I'm glad to see some hands are going up. We have team members with microphones. Barry, why don't you pick
No,
our?
I do want to just like end on what I'm currently working on with the help of Lister and some others. So check it out. I mean, I have this humor book. Hey Yang, where's my $1,000? How many of you ever heard of Cost Plus Drugs, Mark Cuban's company? So I'm friends with Mark. If you don't know, he's buying generic drugs in bulk, selling them to the American people at a 15% markup, saving hundreds of lives, thousands perhaps. I'm friends with Mark, and I was like, holy cow, Mark, this is awesome. Can we cost plus anything else in American life? Because let's say you're me, you agree that, I mean, you guys mostly agree. So let's say you think AI is going to be something of like this, economic hurricane that's going to come, displace a lot of American workers. And then let's say you see Americans' cost structure, like Americans aren't able to save enough money. That cost structure goes housing, healthcare, education, food, fuel, transportation, media, and then wireless data and services. And so you look at that list and say, which of these can I reduce the cost of at scale? Which of them can I cost plus? And so you wind up, at least in my case, you landed on wireless data where you said, wait a minute, we're spending what, $83 a month? Like I personally, by the way, was paying Verizon $150 a month until recently. And that was just for myself. I know, I'm a chump, but whatever. I'm not that out of the ordinary. Verizon paid $11 billion in shareholder dividends in the last 12 months. Their stock pays 6.5% as a dividend. So the only reason anyone owns the stock is just to get paid every 3 months. So their business model now is taking money from chump customers like me and then giving it to shareholders to the tune of 11 billion. AT&T at 7 billion. That's 18 billion. You can see very clearly. That's a cash transfer from unwitting customers, like most of the people in this room, to shareholders. So then what should the pricing be? The pricing should be about half of this. And if you were to save the average American $50 a month, $600 a year, multiplied times 30 years, and then add in a reasonable interest rate and compound it, like what does that come to? It's like a year of tuition almost, It's like tens of thousands of dollars. I personally probably overpaid Verizon at least $15K. I'm pissed off. And so we've licensed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of data from T-Mobile, and now we're making available to the American people at scale, where this is the fun part. You get unlimited for $50, but we give you $20 back at the end of the month based upon data use. So you actually get paid to use your phone less. So our taglines are look up, touch grass, fully present, because when you doom scroll, you're actually costing yourself money. And it turns out Americans like money. And the average mobile user is using their phone 17% less in month 2 than in month 1 because they realize they're costing themselves money. By the way, when you're on Wi-Fi at home or the office there's no data, so we don't know, it doesn't count. So this is like the current mission is that Yang is trying to get you your $1,000. Like I can get you your $1,000 if you switch off of big wireless to Noble in like about a year and a half, and we pay 5.5% interest on your savings, so that your cell phone plan can become your friend that's trying to get you to log off and will actually compound your money, as opposed to an extractive corporate behemoth that just wants to take your money and give it to BlackRock.
Love it.
And I'm going to add on that. So that in and of itself is reason to do it. But like a lot of the companies that we fund that we really get excited about, there's a social component of doing good in addition to that incredible business case, and you're getting people off their phones. Again, I cannot tell you, Google the commercial. It is hilarious, but it's effective in its humor because it makes the point that the time we're spending on our devices does not plus us up. It does quite the opposite, as everybody intuitively in this room already knows, right? Because come on, let's be honest. How guilty are we always when we looked at how much time we spent scrolling, right? So now you've got a behavioral reinforcement to do that less. That's going to save you money. I mean, come on. That is cliche
Yes.
to say. That is the proverbial win-win.
And 3 free months of wireless to everyone in this room. Just go to noblemobile.com/yang. 3 free months, courtesy of Lister Delgado.
And I think we have cards in your bag that with a QR code that lets you scan that. So, all right, we're gonna.
All right. First of all, with the Noble Mobile, is that in rural areas like Eastern North Carolina?
It very much is. Yeah, please do.
We'll have to check it out. Speaking of, my name is Bridget Pfeiffer. I'm with Living Better Life in rural North Carolina, Rocky Mount, Whitakers area. And our goal is to be a place of a pipeline for Black and brown businesses, which we're calling Foundersville. But if there was one policy or one thing that we can do to make sure that we're calling attention to where we are, because we're often overlooked, whether it's for funding or, a lot of things exist, like you said, right next door. We've been talking about this, but don't enter into our areas. What are some of those things and one policy that we can join in and help to push to get that attention in our spaces?
Well, congrats on the work you do. I mean, I think people respond to people and stories most effectively. And so I'm sure there's someone in your community that has a successful business that is at least touching people's lives every day. And one thing, again, I'm the child of immigrants, so it doesn't need to be some like whopping tech company. It can be a food truck, it can be a stand, it can be a restaurant that's making people happy, and then amplify that and say, like, wouldn't you like to see more of this? And we all would. And then that food truck becomes multiple food trucks and then a restaurant, and then before you know it, they're actually like in some of the neighboring areas. Big picture, when I was running for president, I think that putting money into people's hands would be like a real force multiplier, because then everyone in the community would have money to frequent and patronize those businesses. I think you use the word extract too, Tom. It's like that. There's this is like my fear of this time, is that there's a lot of extraction going on, and then the question is, can that value get brought back into communities? And I think that would be enormously helpful for your the community that you're investing in. But congrats on the work. I'm sure you have some success stories that you can augment that are incredibly energizing, and people would love to see more of. I mean, geez, I'm sorry. I don't like looking at it. It's like I believe in education. I believe in housing. I believe in trying to get healthcare off people's backs. I think that healthcare is an anti-entrepreneurial burden, because there's so many people that will not leave a job with healthcare for a job that doesn't have healthcare, because they have something called a family, and they also have something. You know what I mean? Like that stuff drives me nuts. When I was running for president, I was like, the best thing we could do for entrepreneurs is get healthcare off of personal balance sheets.
How do we do that, Andrew? We're only the richest country in the nation, but we can ensure health care for everybody. I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to ask you to react to that. Who's Steve?
Yeah, Andrew, Councilmember Rao with the town of Mooresville. Good to see you again. My question: last week I had the honor of meeting in Morrisville, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, who actually, he's a professor now at MIT, and he was an advisor to Prime Minister Modi for the Innovation ATAL mission. So he actually executed the plans that John Chambers, actually, who Tom and I brought about 2 years ago here virtually, who's now an investor, wrote for the Prime Minister 9 years ago. And during this conversation with Dr. Vaishnav, whom I'm planning to bring back this year, he said that India's startup momentum is just accelerating at an unprecedented pace. Digital payment systems, startups, incubators, broadband in every village. And they've gone from 9 to 4th economy in the span of 9 years. Chambers predicts they'll be #1 in probably the next decade. So I guess my question is, how much of this is also a global, question in terms of our global competitiveness, in terms of the fact that other countries are realizing, like Modi, that a lot of these jobs can be created, even though there's a lot of poverty in India. What can we learn from that? Are there partnership opportunities with them? I'm just curious, because for me, I walked away from the conversation just quite surprised with how confident this man was that, India is a startup nation and we want to be the #1, and we want people to come to our nation to start a company. And that was, as someone who's a son of immigrants, that was really eye-opening. My parents are from India.
That is eye-opening. I had some sense of it. I met someone at TED last year who was working with the Indian government. This room is, again, like a rarity if you look at it nationwide, but it is like this culture at scale, what they're doing in India. And I read a book recently by Dan Wang about Chinese development versus American development. It's called Breakneck, I believe. Anyone know this book? So the argument that Dan made, which I really appreciated, is that China is government by engineers, which has its problems. They make some like egregious mistakes. And America is government by lawyers. And lawyers are not necessarily the most like pro-innovation, pro-growth, pro-startup crew. No offense to the lawyers in this room. But I was an attorney briefly, and I joke that I switched careers because I didn't want to imagine the worst things that could happen all the time. Because that's what like a good attorney will do. They had to try to insulate you from risk in the deal and being like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? So it's like I'd rather outsource my negativity to an attorney. Sorry, attorneys. Love you. I'm one of you ish. That culture that India has set off and plugged into and amplified is very much present in this room. And you can imagine this culture just augmented and applied in communities around the country. America has so much potential still. I mean, I love this country, and we still have so much good in us. It's just we're being held back. And we're being held back, in my opinion, by a political system that doesn't actually need to drive success in order to have everyone remain in place. So that's a big part of it.
I'm going to pile on for 1 second. In my work prior to NCID at the Kauffman Foundation, I traveled the world funding ecosystem building, preaching the gospel of entrepreneurship. And I remember we launched the Ice House program, which is foundational to our mindset program. And you're going to hear more from our colleague, Carlo D. is going to talk about that. And it fascinated me that outside of the U.S., we had large institutions that were willing to do, pilot and could marshal 500 grand, $1 million to put 10,000 young minds through entrepreneurial mindset training. And in the US, it would take 2 years to get a pilot at a community college. And I remember having this epiphany, I think it was either in Bogota or Guatemala, that like, holy shnikey, the thing that had been uniquely an American ideal, a secret to our economic success, entrepreneurship, that secret's out, right? And the example of your question is showing that the countries that are going to lean into entrepreneurship, understanding that it's the entrepreneurs that are creating the solutions to the big world's problems, it's entrepreneurs that are creating wealth and opportunity, the ones that are going to do that, they're going to start teaching us about entrepreneurship, which is, for me, it's unfathomable.
By the way, innovator's dilemma, like it's easier to build off of a low base.
Yeah.
It's one reason why America is kind of, in a tough spot. It's one reason why I'm excited about Noble Mobile is that we just have a really high cost structure. Like people are expensive. college is expensive, healthcare is, but like everything's expensive. So everyone's looking around and being like, okay, like I need a lot of money to like go do something. And then corporates are like, oh, you need a lot of money to do something. It's like, man, I should automate this. You know what I mean? Like you go to India, labor is like a fraction of the cost. You can get very, very smart people working for much less. So it's just easier to grow off a low base. I mean, in some ways they would love to be where we are now in terms of standard of living and wealth and everything else. But like, that's what they hope lies ahead. For us, like we hit that apex, and then the question is, you know, it's like, are we just going to putter into secular decline? Are we going to find a new ramp up? But part of it is we should try and decrease our cost structure. It's like the fact that everyone's way of life is expensive. It just makes it harder to grow.
Any other questions?
Mr. Yang, thank you for being here. And my name is Barry Matson, but before we get to my question for you, can we all just give a big round of applause for Tom for doing this? Like, what a great event. Appreciate you. You're talking about AI, and you're a father. You said you have 2 kids, right? A lot of us are parents here. When I was coming up, my dad told me, when you're choosing your major in college, choose something that the name of it is a job, the name of a job, right? And so when you're seeing the future, and just go ahead and be Nostradamus a little bit for us and predict the future. But what do you think your kids or our kids should major in these days?
So the tough part is, if someone asked that question 8 years ago, what response would they have gotten? Computer science, right? And then today, computer science majors can't get a job because AI codes like much, much faster than the rest of it. So this may be controversial, and I wrote something up about this. To me, it's not course of study anymore, not like when your dad was advising you. It genuinely is about personal qualities. And if you can have your kid be resilient, adaptable, conscientious, sociable, optimistic, like that's actually going to set them apart in this day and age, because there are a lot of young people that will not have those qualities, in part because they're depressed, anxious, addicted to screens, etc. Some of the best training for what I just described is team sports, where like that's the kind of quality, if you can have your child become coachable, and like, you know, they'll try over and over again. And as a parent myself, you know, I think that my kids are going to need to be entrepreneurs in order to have really fruitful, fulfilling careers. Because who the heck knows what the heck like the conventional career is? I would never advise my kids to, you know, I mean, no offense to anyone's kids are doing this, but like, I do not think law school is that safe a bet. Like, I think that the law firms are not going to be hiring in that way. And, you know, and law school has not responded to this by reducing tuition sharply. You know what I mean? Like, I'd feel much better about law school if it were free instead of $60,000 a year or something like that. Like, you know, you come out, I graduated from law school with $100,000 plus in debt. I used to call my school loans my mistress because I was sending a check to like another family in another town being like, I hope Sally Mae is having a great life. But that made some sense when I was assured of like a high-paying job coming out of law school myself. And imagine having the debt without the prospects. I mean, like that's the bucket we're putting a lot of kids in.
I'm going to double click on that. You know, back in our parents' and our grandparents' generation, if you were illiterate, you literally couldn't read or write, it was an absolute limitation to your economic upward mobility. The illiteracy of today is going to be the lacking of an entrepreneurial mindset, where you can look at the circumstances on the ground, unlearn certain things, and relearn new things to be re-relevant again. That is why we profess and invest in entrepreneurial mindset training. We put, my lovely wife, 36 years, knows, we did that with all 3 of our kids. They all had entrepreneurial endeavors as youngsters. That entrepreneurial mindset, it's not a business skill, it's a life skill. And it's going to be the life skill everybody's going to need to survive and adapt and thrive in the future. So I think, yeah, that's all I want to say on that. We have time for one last question. Sarah, make it a good one. No pressure. Oh, Jeffrey Kaplan. Holy crap. All right. Well, we might have 2 questions, but let's see
Got
how
you,
he
Tom.
does.
I'm going to ask 2 quick ones. First of all, hi, Yang Gang, Jeffrey Kaplan from Asheville. Can I trade you the 3 months free for buying out my contract? I can't swap my phone yet.
Just for you, yes.
Love you. Thank you. My real question is this morning, Tom showed rates of new venture creation significantly declining, still pre pandemic levels, but we peaked around 21. I think part of that is there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's, as you said, a lot of pessimism out there. So, my question to you is why should somebody start a business now?
You know what's great about being an entrepreneur? You start a venture in good times, you're like, great, good times. And then you start them in bad times, you're like, great, better businesses get built during bad times, which, by the way, is historically accurate. And so there's never a bad time because if you have a quality organization taking on like a real problem, you can build a growth enterprise around it. And for us, raising money for Noble Mobile was fascinating. So check it out. Imagine Andrew Yang like being like, "Hey, like, do I have relationships? Yes, I do. Will anyone take a meeting with me? Yes." But then I was talking to like these VCs, and one of them literally said to me, "It's like, Andrew, you start anything with AI in the name, I will cut you a check right now." You know, and I was like, "Well, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to lower everyone's wireless bills and get everyone to look at da 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 da." So that there's like a lot of hype around AI investments, a lot of which will not be borne out. And so there are a lot of other types of businesses. I feel so pumped and confident about Noble Mobile in part because like the funding environment was not necessarily pro consumer tech. You know what I mean? And so I think we're going to have like this massive swath of greenfield opportunity to ourselves. So if you feel like fewer ventures are being started, let's take that as like, all right, I have to do a little bit of extra work fundraising, but like after we get ourselves together and maybe be a little bit leaner and meaner up front, like the world's going to be our oyster. And I actually in some ways do prefer that, but I am a bit of a contrarian that way. Like when everyone's heading in a direction, like I do start to get a little nervous about it. So I would take that as like a positive challenge.
And obviously, everybody in this room is going to be rooting for you, none more than myself, because the other point that I hope Noble Mobile will make, kind of in the same vein that Cuban is with Cost Plus, is that you can build great companies, you can make a lot of money for people, but you can also help humanity. You can serve humanity, helping us, have better lives, more fulfillment, more engagement, rebuild that trust that we've talked about. And if we have enough examples, because I'm a firm believer, money leads nothing, it follows. And so if you can be successful, Noble Mobile can be wildly successful, which I'm sure it will be, and others that kind of put that social impact on top of the profit impact, then hopefully money will continue to follow, and we will reward, the markets will reward that. And I think humanity will be better served if we do. I want you all to please join me in thanking Andrew for sharing his insights.